Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Krishna, Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna Ram Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Krishna 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 Ram Hare Krishna Ram Krishna Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Ram Krishna Oh, Hare Krishna 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 Ram Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna 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 Ram Hare Krishna Ram Krishna 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 Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Ram 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 Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Krishna 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram Krishna Krishna Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Ram Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Ram Ram Hare Krishna 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 Ram Ram. Sit properly. Ram Ram Hare Krishna 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 Ram Ram Hare Krishna 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 Ram Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Oh Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Oh Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Ram Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Ram 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 Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Ram 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 Ram, Krishna Ram 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 Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Ram 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 Ram, Krishna Ram 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 Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Ram 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 Ram, Hare Krishna. Hare Ram Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram 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 Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram 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 Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram 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 Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Ram Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram. Sit properly. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna.
total of 1,806 lottery points. That was just Dr. Lucas, Dr. Noah, and Dr. Tom. Haridas. And Haridas. So, we haven't got scores from other devotees. Charana Arinda obviously did some books, and I'm not sure what the ladies went out. Okay. So maybe next week we'll have a bigger score. Shall Prabhupada's personal book distribution here? Shri
Shri Sri Radha Krishna, Gopinath, Shankar, Giri Govardhana ki jai, Vrindavana Chandana ki jai, Vartavana Vrindavana ki jai, Chumani Angamani ki jai, Akidevi Shrimati Tulasi Devi ki jai, Samadeva Bhaktivinoda ki jai, all glories to the Assembly, all glories to the Assembly, glories to the Assembly, glories to Sri Guru, glories to By His grace, I can cross the ocean of material suffering and attain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish that my consciousness is purified, the Lord has been anything from His Tulasi. Attachment to the Tulasi is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, both up and low. From Him He set the crown emanates, and everything is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of His character. Our spiritual master is the ocean mercy. Come the poor and Lord Master of devotees. And I answer the merciful to us. We must share your loyalty. Your fame is spread all over the world. We take shelter of loyalty. No.
And extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth. This sacrament is the pride of addiction and love, because it's better raised than addiction. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and enables us to fully taste the nectar.
Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Mansa Paribhajaracha Small Tam Saraswati Goswami Bhagavati Jaya Nanda Gauri Vaishnava Jaya Ramacharya Shrilas Thakur Jaya Names of the whole Sri Krishna Tam Saraswati Radha Shivasari Gauri Jaya Sri Radha Krishna Bhagavna Sam Kanda Radha Kanda Giri Jaya Vrindavan Dham Ki Jaya Navadvip Dham Ki Jaya Ganga Maya Ki Jaya Jamuna Maya Ki Jaya Guru Dwarka Dham Ki Jaya Swami Bhaktivinoda Ki Jaya All glories to God. All glories to God. Thank you very much.
Can I get a show of hands who would like to listen to a Bhagavatam class by Srila Prabhupada? Or who would like to listen to following Srila Prabhupada, like continue off where we left last EKADASI? So Bhagavatam class? Okay, and then following Srila Prabhupada? It's pretty 50-50. What do we do? This is what do we do?
In spite of all the stories of Prabhupada, I, who had been an English major in college and read a lot of fiction, had always had an idea of there being a dichotomy between the author and his works. So I just always had this keenness to meet Prabhupada, the author of this book, the Bhagavad Gita and other ones that were coming out. And when Prabhupada came to Australia, what struck me was that whether Prabhupada was speaking before an audience
stress. He was him there in the white suit. He was actually, it's Mike Willesee, correct? He was a very famous commentator or a announcer on 60 Minutes and TV and so forth. And many times the devotees had debates with him on TV, but here he is actually. You can see, I don't know if it's a smirk or a smile, I don't think it's a smile. But there he is, quite special.
And when Prabhupada came to Australia, what struck me was that whether Prabhupada was speaking before an audience of 600-700 people or whether he was just in a room alone with me, he was basically speaking the Bhagavatam and the Gita. He was the Gita and the Bhagavatam. You know, you might think that someone would have a public persona, but then when they get back home, you know, there might be other topics of conversation. But he would preach just as strongly to me as the only other person in the room as he would in a huge rented hall with a large crowd. That inspired me to launch a very, very deep study of Srila Prabhupada's books. And I think because I did that and continue to do it to this day, I've never faltered in my faith in Krishna consciousness.
We are selling about 25 to 30,000 rupees worth books daily.
Actually, I didn't know about this movement till Mr. Dadlani came to my office. He was our neighbor, and he came asking whether I could make arrangement for Swamiji's stay in Jakarta. So I immediately told him, okay. At that time, there were not many hotels, so I offered to give our own building. We started to make preparation. We moved to another house and gave the whole building to Swamiji. Just Jina Trading. So this was our house actually. We had a shop down, office, and we were living upstairs on the second and third floor. And Swamiji's room was my room, my bedroom. So I was very happy that he could stay in my bedroom and bless it.
This is at the VIP part of the airport in Jakarta. So we have this special area booked for a greeting of Srila Prabhupada. And there are representatives of the Hindu Indian community and the Hindu Bali, means the Balinese Hindu community, but living in Jakarta. They call themselves Hindu Bali. So you have a selection of representatives greeting Srila Prabhupada and presenting talks. The Vyasa-san, we got a frame welded together which could be unbolted. And when it comes apart, you can stack it on top of a car or a vehicle. So this Vyasa-san appears here and also at Thakurdas Watwani's house and at the National Administration Building lecture, because we were disassembling it and moving it everywhere.
When I was in the high school, this was about a year before Srila Prabhupada came to Jakarta. The devotees came to the school auditorium and they did a massive kirtan, whereby I was impressed and more curious to find out about them, because it was the first time I was seeing Americans doing something like Hindu kirtan. And although I already had some little background about my own religion from my parents, but this was something different. And after they did kirtan, I tried to find out where they were staying, who they were. In fact, I found out that they were staying not far away from the school where I was going. It was Gandhi School, and I went to visit them. And ever since, I always attended their morning kirtans plus the lectures. And I even went in the evening time. We had a small children's club that they started, and I was chosen as the president. So our activities were like make dramas from the Krishna book. I was asked to be vegetarian. I was not vegetarian. So Amoghadasa said, you cannot help us in cooking until and unless you yourself become vegetarian. I asked them how long. I mean, it would take me to become vegetarian first and then help you. So he said, at least a month. You have to prove to us that you will have no tea, no coffee, no onions, no meat eating. And I actually started doing that, and soon after that I started chanting.
I remember I brought my car and drove him in my car. And that car I kept with me for a long, long time. I didn't want to sell till it really broke down. So I thought since he had sat in the car, so I didn't want to sell it. But finally, the car was getting old and giving a lot of trouble. I had to sell it away.
That made my mother very, very angry because she was seeing that I was becoming more and more Krishna conscious. And she was finding it difficult to cook separately for me. So she even tried to make it hard for me, like you have to eat what I prepare or not at all. So when I was really hungry, I had to go in the kitchen and cook myself. After I did that, my mother, I guess, felt pity about it, and she started cooking actually for me. After a while, only Amoghadasa stayed, and it was then that he saw perhaps this is what he said, that I see some sincerity in you and you want to see Srila Prabhupada. And I said, I do, but it sounds so impossible. Can we ask Srila Prabhupada to come here all the way, And then he said, yes, why not? Because Srila Prabhupada always makes trips around the world, and soon he might come to Malaysia and he will go to Australia, and looking at the position of Indonesia, it's somewhere in between, and we could ask him to stop by for a few days. So I said, how would I do that? And he said, well, just write sincerely to him. I will help you out, and I will send it to him. Srila Prabhupada always answers all the letters that come to him. I actually made a letter, but it was modified by Amoghadasa on how to put the words like, please accept my humble obeisances in the beginning. I did not know anything about that. And soon after that, the letter was sent. In hardly, I think, 10 days to 15 days, I got a reply from Srila Prabhupada. It was a full page that he wrote. It was a very long letter, like, my blessings are for you, and if you have sincerely invited me, if Krishna decides, I could stop by for a few days. He did ask in his letter about how many devotees are there. Do you chant regularly? Do you have programs regularly? What are your activities? He did ask about, I hope you're keeping well. And I would like to come and preach to the people there. He did not stress so much on the Indians, but at that time there were more Indian devotees than the local ones.
So this is at the house of Thakur Das Watwani. He had some pictures of Krishna posters that he bought from us in the hallway. And in this room where all the assembly is sitting, there's these big, huge paintings, one of Sai Baba, maybe Shiva, but none of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada gave the lecture in Hindi, and the questions and answers session, one man got up who was from Arya Samaj, and Arya Samaj are very atheistic. They deny the Bhagavad Gita, they deny so many things, that Krishna has a form, that God has a form. So this man actually argued with Prabhupada, kept arguing, and then Prabhupada, he called him something. And I remember the whole audience was shocked, but we couldn't really understand because we're in Hindi. As we know, devotees don't tolerate people who blaspheme Krishna in that way. After the meeting, they wanted to invite Prabhupada into the next room to eat. I said to Srila Prabhupada, they'd like you to come into the next room for some prasadam, and Prabhupada said, we can go now? And I said, oh yes, Srila Prabhupada, we could go now, but actually they'd like you to go into the next room and and have some prasadam. And he said, we can go now? So I knew he wanted to go, so I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, we can go. So we went out to the car and left. And they got very upset. But then the other thing is, which is seen in other times in history, that the disciple can take some blame instead of someone blaming the guru. So everyone blamed me for escorting Prabhupada out of the situation there and said it was all my fault. And Prabhupada didn't leave, but I misdirected or misorganized. So in that way, I guess it's good, because they, instead of criticizing a pure devotee, they just criticized myself.
This is my sister and me. We were at the exhibition for the book sale. My mother changed a lot after seeing Srila Prabhupada. In fact, she told me that when she had a personal conversation with Srila Prabhupada, she had requested within her heart from Krishna to show whether this Swamiji who is sitting in front of me is actually a true Swami and an honest man. And she saw some light coming from Srila Prabhupada's eyes, some glitter, where she was very, very satisfied. And she told me about this incident after coming out from the conversation with Srila Prabhupada. In fact, after that, I also joined the conversation with her and with Srila Prabhupada. And it was a very, very personal conversation where he had sat back comfortably and discussed about the old India times, and they were exchanging their own experiences. When seeing that, in fact, I was like looking at a sister and a brother talking to each other. And he told me about how during his young days he used to see his parents cook rice in the hot sand. And I said, Srila Prabhupada, it's impossible to cook rice in hot sand without fire. And he had laughed and he said, yes, what do you know, because you're born in the modern age. Why don't you believe me, he said. And I had to laugh and I said, of course, Srila Prabhupada, if you say so and if you've seen it, then it must be true. Then suddenly he asked us, so are there papadums here? What food do you eat? And we told him, both of us, that we cook Indian food. We get all kinds of vegetables here. It's almost like India, my mother told him. And he asked about papadums again. And then I said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, we get giant papadums. And he began to converse in Hindi with my mother. And he said, is she saying the truth? There are giant papadums? What do you mean by giant papadums? And then my mother told him they're double the size of Indian papadums. And then he said, who makes them? And I had to explain to him, Srila Prabhupada, we have cooks. In most of the Indian homes, we have local cooks whom we train up. Oh, so you train the cooks and they sell back to you the papadums? And I had to laugh at that, and I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, because when they stop working and they get a little older, then they go back to their villages and start some business, and they end up making papadums. So they learn from you and they sell it back to you, he said. I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. So we had taken Srila Prabhupada some of the papadums and given it to him. The other stories that he was discussing with my mom was how the Pakistanis, even Muslim, used to stay as neighbors with the Hindus in peace. He said we were staying even with one wall between us. And my mother had mentioned that there were windows even in the walls that we could exchange sometimes food and other things that we cooked. There was a lot of conversation between them in Hindi. But he had also, at that time, told my mother, so you should read my books. And my mother told him, I don't read and write. I'm illiterate. And he said, but you can speak Hindi and you can speak Indonesian, so you should learn English. And my mother told him, I'm too old. He said, it's never too old to learn. And she said to him, but Srila Prabhupada, I have read Mahabharata and Ramayana all my life. And he said, they are very different from my books. And it's very important that you understand what you read, because there are so many translations and they are very, very misleading. She had Ramayana and Mahabharata in Sindhi language. In fact, she used to get up very early in the morning, and even since childhood, I used to hear her recite those books. So I guess that was the effect on me that I came to know about Krishna consciousness. It was like every morning we used to hear her read those books. This is the gathering at the Lembaga Administrasi Negara. It's an auditorium beside the President's Palace in Jakarta. This is his first day lecture. Kirtans were held, and a very strong lecture, which was in fact recorded. All the lectures were in fact recorded. I had the opportunity of being with Srila Prabhupada every minute from the morning walks that he had around the place that he stayed during the first day. We went around Pasar Baru area, and he had in fact stopped by at one shop that had words written Toko India. Does Toko mean shop? I said yes, and he said that's Indian person's shop. I said yes, and miraculously at that moment when we looked up, there was an Indian lady folding her hands and paying her obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. It was an odd time for Indians to get up at that time. That day he had seen also a vegetable vendor. We could never pace up with Srila Prabhupada because his walks were very, very brisk and very fast. Despite his age, I was quite surprised, and we were always left behind. So only Amogadas used to walk by his side. So when he saw this vegetable vendor, in fact, he had to wait for me to catch up with him. And then he went ahead and asked, are those corns for sale? And I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. He said, could you bargain with him and buy some for my breakfast today morning? So I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And he said, do you know how to put them on fire with tamarind, salt, and with chili powder? I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. Can you prepare them for me today? I said, yes. So I bought some, and we took them back to the place where he was staying. There I had no coal fire, so all I could do was put some salt and chili powder. I had no tamarind, nothing else. I had put a little butter on it, and I had to bake it on a gas stove. When I had prepared one, he was already insisting, where is the corn? Amogadas took it up to him. I had to rush and prepare those corns. I think he had about 3 or 4 that morning. Amogadas was quite surprised because it's very, very seldom that Srila Prabhupada eats corn. I was told later on from some other devotees that he said that's food for animals. The next morning, in fact, we had gone to a very large park, and Srila Prabhupada always took his morning walks very early in the morning, so that park was in fact not opened. We were going to go inside the park to park the car, but the guard would not allow Srila Prabhupada to take his walk in that park. I had gone down to the guard to ask and tell him that this is a priest coming from India, and he usually takes his morning walks, and if he would permit us to just take a morning walk. And the guard totally refused. So all Srila Prabhupada did was open his window, look at the guard and said, what has happened? And the guard, looking at Srila Prabhupada, just was like hypnotized and immediately opened the gate for Srila Prabhupada to go in. It was like a miracle, and we were all surprised.
The upstairs level of Jena trading. And this is where Prabhupada would meet guests or the minister of Hindu and Buddhist religion, the family members.
This is our house. Family gathering, yes, this is our family now. This is my wife. She had just given birth to a boy, a baby. He told us to ask whatever we wanted. I don't remember, but it was quite interesting. We were very impressed. And he blessed all of us. I remember one question he asked me whether I believed in God. I told him, of course I believe in God. But he kept on asking from me, do you believe in God? This is my son.
When Prabhupada arrived, he arrived and stayed in his room, and we were outside, and then we were all kind of resting because it was quite an event for us. And Prabhupada only rested about a half hour after an international flight. And then Prabhupada, we heard him going around the whole room, quite a large room he was in, switching all the lights on and off, testing all the latches, everything, all the switches and different things around the room. It was interesting. The next section shows Srila Prabhupada at the Hindu Bali temple at Rawamangalam. And they have a band, I think it was called a gamelan. It's a kind of music that plays percussion and gongs and different instruments. It's quite unusual. It's an undescribable, unique sound that band has. When Srila Prabhupada arrived, they sat down all together and chanted the first line of the Gayatri Mantra out loud. And together, that's what they do. They sit and slowly chant the first line of Gayatri Mantra. In Srila Prabhupada's talk, he talks about the Gayatri Mantra and the meaning of Gayatri. They played their own music to greet Srila Prabhupada, but also when he sang Jai Radha Madhava, which is he would always sing before speaking, he directed them to play along with him as he sang Jai Radha Madhava. But their band plays in very minor keys, and it's quite an amazing sound to hear Prabhupada chanting Jai Radha Madhava and them playing those instruments at the same time. It's very unique. And then they walked Prabhupada around the outside. They have an outdoor altar with a very high structure with a chair at the top, an empty chair, and then all these kind of carvings of beings. They bring offerings, and they invite Lord Brahma, whoever they want to worship, to sit there. But Srila Prabhupada said they should have Radha and Krishna up there.
Is it possible for only one person to be initiated? Then Amoghadass said, Krishna consciousness believes in quality than in quantity. And I have spoken to Srila Prabhupada and said that there is only one sincere devotee that I see worth getting an initiation from you, and he has agreed. So I myself, I had gone inside the room, and he had chanted on the beads, and after chanting, I had asked him the question, Srila Prabhupada, what can I do? What is my duty after this? Do I have to leave my home and come and stay at the temple? And he said, no, it's not necessary. Krishna consciousness means you have to change your consciousness. It does not matter where you stay. You just have to chant and remember Krishna all the time. That is Krishna consciousness. And I said, what is my duty? He said, if you speak Sindhi, then preach to the Indian ladies. Read my books, chant, and be happy.
As a filmmaker, it was an exciting time. This was my first 16mm film, shot with a borrowed camera in 10 3-minute loads of film. And what better subject than Srila Prabhupada and the devotees in Mayapur during Gaur Purnim.
When the devotees came to Mayapur, then Prabhupada took us out on parikrama. He took us to the different temples and showed us Lord Chaitanya's historical pastime places. And then he wanted us to go out every year. So here we're going to Srivas Angan, where the original Sankirtan party was held, and we're dancing very enthusiastically at the place of the original Kirtan in the garden of Srivas. Prabhupada wanted the devotees to be engaged. In those days, there wasn't so much interaction between ISKCON and the Gaudiya Maths, but once a year we could go and visit Lord Chaitanya's places. And that was about the interaction that we had.
There was a palpable consciousness that this was the fulfillment of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prophecy that the devotees from the East and the West would meet in the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya and perform Harinam, Sankirtan. And this was it. And there was an awareness, and the kirtan was beyond words.
This is the birthplace temple. Originally, the birthplace temple was actually a grass hut because Lord Chaitanya was born in a grass hut. And then they changed it to a concrete replica of a grass hut. And Prabhupada expressed his dissatisfaction that they couldn't have maintained it. It would have been nice to maintain it in its pristine form. Mayapur was a cow shed and a cement go down and a construction site. And the devotees were staying in tents. It was very austere. This is the Lotus building, the first building. Prabhupada was very much involved in the whole construction. Every time he came, he wanted to see what was happening. He'd go on a tour of the building, see how it was going. He was personally sending the money for paying for the construction. He would get donations and he would send it. When the building was partially finished and we already started to live in it,
Radhamadava were in the bhajan kutir. Then we built this little kind of a shed just to the side of the bhajan kutir where the arti is going on. There's a lot of people there because that was Gopurnima festival. But previously, no one was coming to Mayapur. The whole of 72, practically nobody came. And more or less I knew everybody that was walking down that road. And there were no visitors, they were just local people. And one time, I saw some people walking down and I thought, oh, these are not local people because you can tell by the dress. So then they actually come in the property. And I thought, oh, they're coming in for darshan. And I thought I would get it back to Godhead and see if I can give them back to Godhead when they come. So I run in the bhajan kutir and got it back to Godhead. I come out, and Prabhupada was already standing there. He had come out the bhajan kutir also. And he was just standing in front of the deities. And he looked at me and he said, why you're not here? He said, you see the guests are coming and there's no one here. The first people have been in about a couple of weeks. He said, no one is here. He said, people are coming. He said, you should be here. I said, I just want to get back to Godhead, Prabhupada, and I just come out. And then he was kind of looking at me, and it seemed to be saying, what are you making all these excuses for? He was kind of smiling. I remember the first time I gave Prabhupada Charanamrita there, and my hand was shaking uncontrollably. And I was looking at my hand, I was thinking, why is it happening like this? It never happened before like that. It was really just uncontrollably shaking. And he just kind of looked at me and smiled. And he took the Charanamrita. Another time Prabhupada was sitting in the bhajan kutir just on the outside under the veranda with one of his godbrothers, Damodar Maharaj. And I went and I offered him Charanamrita. And he was just sitting there, the sun was shining in it. And he just put his head back and he opened his mouth. And then he let me pour the Charanamrita into his mouth. Then Damodar Maharaj, his godbrother, did the same thing. He just put his head back and opened his mouth and I was pouring Charanamrita in. But it was kind of a strange experience because, you know, Prabhupada, he was our Lord and Master and the big father figure, protector and everything, and then he's kind of acting like a little baby and you have to feed him. It was a new experience that I had with Prabhupada.
Prabhupada really liked Mayapur. You know, he seemed really relaxed in Mayapur when we would come. I remember the one time we went up to his quarters when he first got there, and of course I'd follow him in, setting everything up, and he was just looking out his window. You know, his windows, of course, were on each side of his room. So he walked in his front door, and he just looked out his window, and you know, then it was just stretches of fields everywhere. It was wide open and very tranquil, very peaceful.
And he would just chant, and look out there. And one time he turned, and he just looked at me and he smiled and he said, "So, Sruta Kirti Maharaj, you like it here in Mayapur?" And I said, "Yes, Prabhupada, very much." The way his quarters was set up there, they had the padding, across the entire room. So sometimes you could go in there in the middle of the day and Prabhupada would just be laying on the floor and he'd have his feet over the big bolster pillows that were against the walls. He would just move one out a little bit, so he'd just have his legs hanging over the bolster pillow and he'd just be relaxing. And his morning walk was always right outside his room. As soon as he'd go down the steps, he was already on his walk, right? But he also always knew everything that was, who was around, who wasn't around, who was missing the walk. Because sometimes if he was going out, get down to the bottom of the stairs and he would ask, "Where's such and such? Where's this devotee? Where's that devotee?" One time he asked, he said, I don't know who it was, he said, "Where's this devotee?" And someone said, "Oh, he's sick, Prabhupada." Prabhupada kind of chuckled. And I said, "Yes, Prabhupada, I think he has morning sickness." And then Prabhupada laughed. He said, "Yes, that is the difficulty." Expected everyone to be up in the morning. And he never minimized that. Always did the opposite, even with the people that traveled with him. Because we were the ones affected too by that so-called jet lag and stuff as he traveled around, but he wasn't interested in hearing about it.
Prabhupada was so happy that we had cows. He said, "This is very auspicious." He said, "If the cows are grazing on the land where we're going to build the temple, then by passing cow dung and walking over the land, it's going to make it very auspicious for the temple." Prabhupada wanted us to feed the local villagers, so we had, even before we had a building, we had a big pot for cooking and distributing prasadam. Prabhupada used to go on walks, and he liked to walk along the pathways in between the fields. He called these the little highways. As he'd be walking, then the villagers would offer him respect and pay obeisances. It was a very informal, friendly environment with all the local villagers. Prabhupada would walk out in the fields and then he'd look and say, "Here there'll be a spiritual city one day."
I have seen that Prabhupada morning walking time, one villagers, he is taking some sabji, vegetables to nearby market. Then Prabhupada stops suddenly. Then he says, "Why you are going?" "I have to sell this vegetable to the market." Then Prabhupada says, "Why not you are giving to the temple? You can serve Radha Govinda by giving your vegetables." Then he has agreed. He purchased all the vegetables, big bucket he purchased. Then he told Jayapataka. Then Jayapataka paid his amount. He told that vegetable man, "Please you come every day and talk to the temple manager and give sabji, fresh vegetables to the Radha Govinda." He has all the time mind to give fresh flowers, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits. I have seen also sometimes in Calcutta somebody purchase not fresh fruits. So he was very annoyed. Why you do not buy the fresh fruits for Radha Govinda? So I have seen same thing, fresh vegetables he likes to offer Krishna.
Prabhupada was going on a walk and he called me because he said he wanted me to take the part of the material scientist. Then I said to him, "All right," speaking as a scientist, I said, "We will not argue whether a soul exists or not. We'll just take it as a given that a soul exists. So my question to you is that we will create the right properties in our laboratory and in our test tubes so that your Krishna will send a soul into a test tube. Is that premise accepted by you? Is that acceptable?" Because if I was thinking, if I can get Prabhupada to say yes, then I'll say, then we have created life. And then Prabhupada just said, you rascal scientist, you will not tell Krishna where he has to send a soul.
Prabhupada sometimes used to go for a morning walk there on the Ganges. It used to take about almost 20 minutes to walk there. At that time it was way, way over the other side. And one time actually they all took baths there. They were all sannyasis, I think, or at least brahmacharis and sannyasis. And Prabhupada said, you can take a bath if you like. They said, Prabhupada didn't bring any gamchas. I said, it's okay, no one's around. You can go in your kopin. So everybody jumped in the Ganga, and then Prabhupada went in also. He had a gamcha, his servant brought him a gamcha. And he also went in. And then they started fighting, splashing and everything like that. And Prabhupada said that, this is okay. He said, Lord Chaitanya, he was also doing this. Then someone started to splash Prabhupada, Madhavisa Maharaj, I believe. Mildly, in a playful way, but he was giving little splashes with his hand. But Prabhupada said, don't become too familiar with your guru. He reprimanded him. And Guru Kripan, and they were pouring water on Prabhupada's head with their hands, chanting Chintamani Prakara Sadmasukal, chanting Chintamani prayers. Another time he said, if you build a road from our ashram to the Ganga, nice road, he said, I will come every morning for a walk here. And another time he said, be careful, because the Ganga could come and take away all of our property. For several years, the Ganga was constantly changing course. Then the course was diverted right over to the property. But then the government took action. They made some proper embankments there with bricks. But it came very, very close, right up to the road. But now it's gone back to a steady course, which is a very good symptom, because in the Nabadita Mahatmya, it's predicted that for several hundred years, about 400 years, the Ganga will constantly do this, actually flood the whole area. And then after 400 years, Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions, then she'll go back to a steady course again. And then he said many, many bathing ghats will be built on the Ganga, and many, many temples will be built, and many household dwellings will come up. And there will be, of course, the Adbhut Mandir, a very astonishing temple, will rise, from which service to Lord Chaitanya will spread all over the world. So now we're seeing this. Now the Ganga is more or less settled. There are permanent ghats being made. ISKCON's made one. Madhav Maharaj has made a permanent ghat. And there's hundreds and hundreds of dwelling places now, all over the place. We have our Grihastapara. Then just outside the master plan of our project, there's so many houses. And the community members also of the Chaitanya Math and Jogpit, Gaudiya Math, they're also building little houses. There's hundreds of little houses. It's all predicted by Nityananda Prabhu. So these are good signs.
One day it was the Govardhana Puja, and we built a big mountain of rice, and we fed many people. And the people took their leaf plates after taking prasadam, and then they threw it behind the building. And then Prabhupada was living up on the second floor. And we were sitting in the room together, and then he heard dogs barking and kids shouting. And so then he got up and walked back on the veranda behind his room. And he looked over and he saw that there was this big pile of leaf plates of people that had eaten their meal, and there was little scraps on the plates. So then there were some very poor children with sticks in their hand, fighting off some very hungry dogs, trying to get the scraps of food that people hadn't finished eating on their plate. When Prabhupada saw that how these children were so hungry that they had to eat the things that people threw away, and how they were fighting with the dogs to get these scraps of food, tears swelled in his eyes, and he said, we had to see that nobody goes hungry within a 10-mile radius. The temple is the house of God. God's everyone's father, Krishna's everyone's father, so in the presence of the Father, the Son doesn't go hungry. So like that, we have to make an arrangement that people get fed. And so that was inspiration for regular prasadam distribution.
And I remember one time watching Srila Prabhupada while all the people from the villages were out taking prasadam, he would go to the little window in the hut and then look out and watch them. And then I would remember the verse, Chatu Vidhashri Bhagavat Prasada, that the spiritual master is very satisfied if he sees the devotees taking prasadam. And he looked very happy, he looked very satisfied.
Prabhupada was trying to involve his god brothers and work cooperatively with them. Especially he made a lot of effort with Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, because they were very old friends. He used to come and visit Prabhupada in his house and stay at their guest house. So he was inviting him to come even to the west and see the temple, see how the preaching was going on. But he declined, he said it was too far. So he invited him to come over to Mayapur. So he agreed to come. So then Prabhupada had him share a seat on the Vyasasan with him. And he was very, very accommodating and loving to him.
Prabhupada invited all of his godbrothers to come. And they were all coming, one at a time or two at a time, throughout that whole morning. And he spoke to everyone and he said exactly the same thing to everyone. He said, we're having some success in our preaching, and so we have some good facilities now. And he said, and you are all experienced preachers. You have been trained by our Prabhupada. He said, so I have all these buses coming out. It's that time when they were bringing all those Mercedes buses. He said, I have many buses. So I can give you all a bus, and I will give you men. And you just go out and preach. He said, if you have any problem in your temple maintenance, he said, I will also give you men for your temples and to help you maintain in the temple. He said, there's only one condition. He said, that you distribute my books. My books are to be distributed on these parties. He said, but you will lead, you will preach. Unfortunately, not one of them accepted his offer. And Prabhupada really tried to get them to work together again.